Scandi Pitches, Scandi Singers. Hello and welcome back to Scandi Pitches, Scandi Singers Talk Singing. And how are you doing today, Therese?
Oh, I'm all right. Just happy to be talking about singing, which is an activity that I enjoy.
Yeah, it's
and that is important to me and to my it's important for me and my well-being.
Ooh, this is a segue. This is a segue. Well, I guess we can probably maybe dive straight in.
We can.
Because today we are going to be talking about singing and well-being. And the concept of singing and well-being, I think this is something that's been a lot. It's been focused on a lot for the last few years. It's maybe while we were growing up, that wasn't such a big thing, but in recent years, it's become a huge thing, and particularly so in the UK. Probably the rest of the world, though I can't speak for every country, but it's definitely become a big deal. So. I guess the first thing we have to discover is what is well-being exactly? Okay,
so you're going to throw me the hard question first off.
Therese, this is not unusual for me, Therese. I always ask, but we have to. If we're going to talk about singing,
I should be prepared for it, but I just forget who you are between episodes, and who I am for that matter.
It's just well-being, so
Yeah, I mean, I define well-being as a sort of like fluid state. And well-being, I think well-being is often sort of considered synonymous with happiness, which I don't think it is. I think that well-being is a sort of the ability to exist within a spectrum of emotions and physiological changes or whatever, and feel connected to yourself throughout whatever goes on around you and inside you. And fluctuations in moods and behavior are just part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a bit of it kind of comes in the word, isn't it? Well-being, being well, feeling good, feeling,
Yeah.
And I was actually looking to see, because it's a term that, you encounter it a lot, but sometimes it's not very clearly defined. And I kind of got the same experience trying to find out, because you would get a different kind of description of what it is. There is kind of indicators of general wellness or well-being in a population. And this is actually something that has been around for a while. Something that's used to, very broadly defined well-being in a population is the Human Development Index. Are you familiar with this?
You enlighten me.
The Human Development Index. Well, this is something we learned about this in school, actually, and it's how sometimes people talk about the what's it called in English? Bruttonasjonalprodukt. Yeah. I know what it's called in Norwegian. I forget what it's called. It's like GDI or something. The general like. It's something to do with like the income of a country. Again, it's a typical thing where I should have probably checked the translation. I know the word in Norwegian. But,
I'm pretty sure I know what general development index is in Swedish, but not.
Yeah, well, it's it's just an indicator of the economic growth in a country, but as an extension of this, because sometimes economic growth is not the same as a population at large getting better. If you have a couple of huge companies in a country that are hoarding a lot of money, you could still end up with a huge, GDI. And again, I really need to check what this word is. But you're not going to necessarily end up with a population that is feeling, good and healthy. So the Human Development Index was developed as an alternative that then incorporates life expectancy and education. And so, of course, these are general indicators, and so they don't maybe say so much about each individual person, but you could say a country that has a highly educated population, that also where the average income divided by the population is relatively high, they would be then considered to have a high Human Development Index. So countries like like, well, in Northern Europe, a lot of the countries score quite high on these.
Yeah.
Australia has quite a high one, New Zealand, Canada. These are countries that are considered to have high human development index, and where then, in general, the population is considered to be quite, what should I say, feeling quite good, if you will, good health and stuff. But of course, this is talking on a population level, and well-being is often associated with more personal things, where it's like you're feeling a sense of accomplishment, you're feeling like you're belonging in a group that makes you feel good, you've got a support network. There's these kinds of things that come into it as well. So it's it's something that could be both macroscopic and microscopic, as we used to say in school, where it's got to do with the whole population, but also the individual.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be looking at singing and well-being. Now, why would singing be affecting your well-being? For us as singers, it's obvious, but maybe it's not for, someone who doesn't do a lot of singing. Why would it be a connected thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, I was actually still thinking about human development index and like how. No, it's fine. I just think it's an interesting thing because I mean, obviously, I obviously do know what it is, but it's I'm just trying to reflect on how much we actually talked about the human aspect of things when I was learning that in school, because actually I think that it was largely focused on the sort of material well-being of countries when we discuss those things. So more like, BNP, bruttonationalprodukt.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting. Because I don't want to, stereotypically you think that Sweden would talk quite a lot about human well-being.
But hygge, as they say in English.
Define it.
Hygge.
Yeah, I mean, the Danes, they got it right. They probably talk about it a lot. But yeah, no, anyway, but singing for well-being. Repeat the question, please. How are they connected, did you say?
Well, yeah, so why would we be talking about singing as a part of well-being? How does singing affect how does singing affect you in a way that can be conceived as promoting well-being?
So there's actually, I think there are like several different strands. I think like when people talk about singing and well-being, most often like you talk about sort of psychological benefits and the sort of particularly relating to ensemble singing. I think there's a lot of that sort of togetherness and the social elements of that. And for me personally, I think that's always been something that's quite, most of my social life throughout the years I've been alive has been through choir activity, if I'm very honest. And then it's like, there's a particular thing of if you're a bit shy as well, or not necessarily the person who walks up first to a bunch of people and starts talking, then it's a way to be together with people and to do things together and to communicate as well, but without having to have a conversation. And I think that's excellent.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's been the subject of some studies recently. So I did find, while I was looking into this, I found a study from 2015 where they looked at participants singing together and and they would do a subjective test on how together they felt with their group, and then they would their control group would be people who didn't sing together with other people, and they would find that the feeling of social bonding was that happened much faster with people who sang together than people who just kind of talk together in a non-singing situation. Yeah. So this is, it's not strange that you felt that way, because that's no,
kind of proven. and I guess as well, because of, like we've talked about before, like the voice and communicating through your singing and your voice in that way, like it makes you quite vulnerable in some ways. It's something that can be felt or perceived as quite personal, I think, for a lot of people. So so actually like sharing a space and sharing something of yourself that's really personal, and also receiving that in return from others. Like it's not so strange to imagine that would create a certain type of bond, and that like it can be a shortcut to deeper friendships. If if it's okay to say that, but then also like there's definitely research implying that there are physiological benefits to singing as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we actually covered a little bit of it in the very first episode of our podcast, where we did touch upon this, because we were talking about why do people sing, and while research about it has kind of come forwards in the last 50 years or so, there was probably some sort of understanding that it did something because of how prominent it was in cultures to have singing rituals, for instance, or to use singing as part of their health magic, if you will, healing magic. And so as we say, there's been studies, and in fact, I'll just list off a few things that studies have found. I'll post the article I found, because they collated a lot of this information about the studies, so it was really useful. So first of all, there's the very obvious stuff. When you do singing, you will need to use your muscles, and you need to exercise breath control, and have a good posture, which is good for you. I say that and then I sit up straight. It's like if you know someone who does the Alexander technique, and then everyone's like, whoop.
Yeah, I know.
Fixes their posture immediately. So there's kind of the obvious physiological things where you have to have a certain posture to sing, you have to control your breathing, which has that's very directly linked to your bodily health, if you will. Then there's the release of certain hormones in the body, and listening to or playing music will cause your brain to release endorphins, which is like a natural painkiller almost. It's the same kind of thing that your body releases after you've gone to the gym, for instance, and it creates this really like rush and it acts as a painkiller because your muscles are like aching, so the body's like, right, gotta fix that. But then a side effect is it also makes you feel quite good. You have so cortisol, the hormone that causes stress. When you listen to or play music, then the amount of cortisol in your blood is reduced. I'm not sure exactly why, but that will cause people to feel less stressed. Likewise, your body will release dopamine, which is the thing that your body releases when you eat something nice, or you hug someone, or you have sex with someone or something. Then your brain's, that's like the rewards. Like, yes, you did something
the happy
good.
Thing.
But it literally it's the sort of thing that makes you feel I should say in the right amount, because too much dopamine has also been associated with like psychosis and stuff. So it's it's an amount thing.
Yeah, I mean, you did say that it can be released when you hug someone. It sounded a little bit like you say it can be released when you've hung someone.
Oh,
so, but maybe that's the psychosis related thing then.
If you come from a country where, or a time rather, where people would hang people,
where hangings are entertainment.
Well, I mean, okay, let's not get into that.
Let's not go there. I couldn't resist.
But anyway, so as a summary, there's a number of different hormones that your body releases when listening to or playing music that make you feel good and reduces stress levels. Yeah. Now, but why? So I mean, people could be playing the piano or the oboe or the theremin. Why would singing be a thing that people kind of latch onto quite a lot, instead of going to their theremin orchestra? Why do we go to choirs?
You can take your voice with you anywhere.
Yes.
I mean, well, I think that's one thing, but also I think again, like obviously an instrumentalist is as one with their instrument, but I think maybe going back to sort of that thing of like quite vulnerable communication and accessing something that is very distinctly within yourself. Like your voice is I mean, if you have a voice, then it's very much like part of you, and it's something. I think that allows you, in some ways, to access parts of yourself as well. I mean, I think musical performance and music and listening to music can do that, regardless of where you are in relation to the instrument that you're using, whether the instrument is inside you or not. But I think, it's very. I don't know. I think now I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I think there is something with the voice that's so strongly connected to our own emotion and our own like physiological expression of emotion. I think so. Sometimes I think singing can actually sort of allow you to go places both physically and emotionally where you need to go, if that makes sense. So like sometimes I think in the past for me, like I've had, if I've been going through tough times, then singing can, depending on what I sing and depending on what context, it can either make me feel better if I access a certain like something in certain songs that's like quite close physiologically to how I feel and what happens in my body when I laugh, and when I feel happy, then that's one thing. But also sometimes if I really need a bloody good cry, then actually singing can be a shortcut to that. And that's sort of permission to feel, which I think music does generally and art does generally. It's a license to feel and to experience.
Yeah, it's interesting how over the years of having, media that uses music, so whether it be like a TV show or a film or whatever it is, music has kind of been codified a bit into emotion as well. So there are certain kinds of music that you've always been like trained to associate with sadness, and certain kinds of music you've been trained to associate with happiness, and subconsciously through just watching films and TV shows. And so to have certain emotional connections with music is probably, quite a reasonable assumption in today's society, where everyone, consumes media that uses music to express emotion.
But I think also like it can be such an exploration, and you can really sort of learn new things about yourself and about a piece of music by giving it a different treatment as well. And just like, even if it's just for yourself, like some things, depending on when it is and what the timing of it is, like you can hear things in new ways when singing them yourself and finding a new connection. So like, I've said at some point, I think that once upon a time, the Katy Perry medley that you arranged just made me cry every rehearsal because of things that I was experiencing at the time. And it's like, I don't know. And also, I mean,
so what, again, you didn't have an emotional connection with California Girls were unforgettable. Daisy Dukes bikinis on top.
Yeah, it's just, I just, bikinis. It's a trigger for me. No, I think it was slightly different parts of the medley, I think, actually. I think Teenage Dream is quite we've talked about that before.
Great
and
song,
that's, it's and when you performed that in this play that we did, is like, we made it a little bit more reflective and a little bit more sad, and that's all in there. Like, it's not that the piece of music itself has changed. It's just about like finding different aspects of it that are meaningful in a different way to you at that point, maybe. But also, but I also really, I really love, taking music that's complete opposite of what most people's associations with it are, and like placing them in a really random context and like creating that sort of, but that's, again, I suppose, is a way to access some kind of emotion, even if it is like sort of emotional confusion perhaps, or
I guess it's interesting. We have kind of strayed a little bit off topic, so I'm going to kind of steer us a little bit back.
Yeah, bring us back. I mean, I just sit here and talk nonsense, and
no, but
you
that's
are at the
how
helm.
conversation. That's how a conversation works, Therese. A conversation is just a series of anecdotes and people getting off topic, and that's just how a conversation works.
Thank you for clarifying.
I thought I needed to tell you. Okay, sorry. Okay, so you mentioned that people carry their voice with them, and so it's a really easy instrument to bring into music making. And in fact, I think that's probably part of the reason why singing is such a big deal, is the fact that everyone has a voice. Not everyone has access to a violin or a bassoon or whatever it is, but everyone has a voice. And with I mean, unless you've lost your voice in some way, then you do have a voice. And so if you're going to be making music, it's kind of the most obvious instrument to do it with. And so what's great then is also it's not so cost dependent, which I think is what makes it a really good thing. If you, for instance, work with people from a less well-off part of society, where people don't maybe have the funding to have string orchestras or or can afford to have a course, but singing that is a cost-effective thing to set up. So I think that's probably why it's such a popular choice for music making.
It's also, even if you do have the means, it's not always everyone's priority. Not everyone has the inclination to spend hundreds and thousands of pounds on expensive instruments and lessons and whatnot.
But a lot of people also get singing, through other activities. So like if you're part of a religious group, then singing is often something that's done as part of the the services. So it's something that people maybe already do. And so it's easy enough to kind of get into it because you already have some experience doing it. Whereas teaching someone to play the violin, that takes time and kind of outside efforts.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, stuff like connecting with, the material on an emotional level. I think the fact that we use words when singing probably does create a lot of appeal, because even if you maybe can't appreciate every musical concept that happens, you can still maybe understand the lyrics and the message of the song a little bit easier. And so it's easier to connect with the material, and that probably, will cause you to connect more with it on a personal level.
Yeah.
I also think there's been quite a lot of singing programs on the telly in the last 20 years, starting with, I think, Idol, and then these days you have stuff like The Voice, X Factor, and especially for the UK, The Choir by Gareth Malone. Yeah. Which really brought a lot of...
Yeah, and a Swedish version of a similar program, like the choir battle, as it was called. It was, that aired in Sweden for quite a long time.
Do you know about the one where they do the singing on the border between Norway and Sweden? Allsang på gränsen.
No, I've missed that, but of course that was done. I'm not surprised.
It's probably the pinnacle of Scandinavian cheese. Is you have probably a lot of dance bands playing music right on the border between Norway and Sweden. So you have a Swedish and a Norwegian audience together, and they're all singing together. It's so cheesy.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh my God, we have to link that, I think.
I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, it's such a Scandinavian thing to do as well. But I think being exposed to it quite a lot on the TV means that, it's something that people are aware of the option. Maybe in the past, choirs were so associated with the church that you felt like if you went to choir, then that was more of a religious thing. Whereas these days, because there's been a lot of focus on the way, the positive benefits it has for you, physically and mentally, but also the fact that it's now considered more an informal thing that anyone can get involved with, and it doesn't have any, necessarily religious connotations, then it becomes this really accessible thing that, people can get involved with.
Yeah.
Good. And one final thing is, of course, and this is probably what's kept me at choirs for a while as well, and you mentioned it before, the fact that you end up seeing the same people regularly, once a week, which especially unless you're talking about your colleagues, who do you really see on a regular basis these days?
Yeah. I mean, I do see my husband regularly, but it's because he lives with me. So
okay, fine. Apart from
the people you live with, you might see if you live with people. But yeah, no, you're right. It's not really a thing. Like in this day and age when everybody is so busy, and especially in big cities like London and stuff like that as well, it's you live so far from each other. It's not easy to arrange, even if you would be happy to see each other once a week. It's a bit of a mission to do that. But if you're all going to be somewhere anyway, then it's great. It's an opportunity to see people, especially if it's like, if it's quite difficult to be the instigator of meetings, and it can just, it can just slip away, even if all parties would be really happy to meet.
Yeah. And so a choir rehearsal kind of creates that situation where you're all coming together. You're doing something that, does promote social bonding and has other, health effects. So, and then that as an extension will give you a social circle that you see regularly, and that might promote a sense of well-being as well. Having I mean, I certainly miss that time in school when you would see the same people for a long time, and you would be able to develop kind of a meaningful kind of friendship relationship, or even if you weren't friends with them, they would form part of your everyday life. And especially if you're self-employed, as musicians tend to be, but also, which is, becoming more and more a common thing, even in other jobs. You maybe don't see the same people over and over every single day. That's so yeah. Anyway, let's quickly summarize. So, singing for well-being. Well, well-being has to do, can be a general population thing, but it can also be an individual thing. It has to do with, feeling a sense of accomplishment, health, like you've got a good, social network. You feel, you feel well, you feel good. Yeah. And singing has several documented effects on the body, being release of certain, stress-reducing hormones and endorphins and so on. And it's probably
improving posture and breathing.
I say that, and I'll say I'm kind of hunchback.
Yeah, I'm always conscious of talking posture when I'm doing these meetings.
Yeah, but it's also, I'm trying to kind of be close to the microphone, but not too close.
Yeah.
And singing is a very accessible thing. It's been very popular for the last 20 years because of the use in TV programs such as The Voice and X Factor and The Choir. And it's an accessible instrument that most people have readily available and can, be used at low cost. So I think that's probably the gist of what
for singing.
Pardon?
The advert for singing.
Well, I mean, we could advertise it, but it's kind of been done for us already, hasn't it?
There's no need.
Everyone
and also,
choirs.
like people have choice. Sing if you wanna.
All right, so I think we're going to call it there. So thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Scandi Pitches. We hope you enjoyed it, and let us know if you have any interesting reflections on singing and well-being. Maybe you have some experience of how singing helped you kick a depression, or I don't know, it just has been a positive, aspect of your life. Please let us know. And we shall see you in another episode of Scandi Pitches.
Bye-bye.
Bye.